Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Back in the studio with us today, vocal coach, vocal producer, music producer, songwriter, artist, and public speaker. And we've had her on the show in the past, and you know what? It's time to bring her back. Judy Rodman, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you again, Bob.
Thank you. Well, you and I, although we have been on separate playing fields over the past year.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, we it's funny. I think all of us just in this industry, we're all playing at different playing fields by ourselves. So it's just really strange. Mm-hmm. How you been?
I've been busy in different ways.
That's good because for what you do, keeping busy means that you're helping a lot of people.
Right. And people come to me now for different reasons or variations of the reasons they used to come to me. But my main person that I work with is someone who's interested in the voice for commercial and career reasons, like either the talking voice, which of course never did stop, right? Voiceover, teleseminars, workshops online, all that kind of stuff. It never really stopped, even though the meetings where everybody was present and accounted for in person stopped. It didn't stop online. And then, of course, singers have had to keep singing one way or the other. And whether you're live and in person in the flesh or you're online, your voice still needs to sound pretty good and feel pretty good. So there've been, so many inventive ways for people to try to remain visible orally on the internet. So, I continue to work with them, plus people who are getting ready for their next project.
Let's start really going back about a year now, because we're 12 months into this.
Right.
And the artist who is a singer, is a vocalist, whether they're playing 5 nights a week on Lower Broadway in Nashville, or they're on the Broadway stage in New York, or they're a session vocalist in Los Angeles, and this all went away. So I'm not a vocalist, so kind of bear the ignorant question coming from me.
But you are.
Yeah, okay. So even though I'm a professional vocalist, when we don't use our voice in the capacity and the level of what typically we would experience in this business. Now, you and I were a little different because, what you do with your vocal health and your vocal training, and, me, I talk every day because we have a show. Mm-hmm. But do you lose a certain amount of quality or quantity or octave range or something if you take this year off and you just go stagnant?
Well, that's a double-sided question. For people that have been using their voices too much the wrong way, it can actually be vocal recovery time. And like you take a month off of singing when you've been singing really hard, sometimes that lets the instrument really heal and, get better. On the other hand, you're right. The main thing people need to know is technique, the technique of using the voice and the technique of acting techniques, which are communicative skills. But the other thing is just pure stamina, because the vocal folds and the instrument just in general, it's muscles working in there. And so if you stop working completely for a long time, you'll notice that they're a little weak. But the truth is, and I know this from personal experience because, I don't perform like I used to all the time, but still, if I have about 2 weeks of singing full voice, as long as the show is going to be, and I use good technique, I'm back where I was. I can get people back on their feet, so to speak, and tour ready in 2 or 3 weeks and no more than that.
That's interesting. I watched a show last night, Chip Gaines, who's famous for, he and his wife were rebuilding houses, and, they've got Magnolia Farms and the silos in Waco, Texas. He got involved in a marathon, and he was trying to get himself together. And one of the comments was, how long will this take to get me ready to run a marathon? And then the person training him, coaching him, said, well, it'll be about 4 months from now. And it was a long, grueling process. What you say with regards to the vocal cords being muscles, it's a lot of the same mindset. You attribute healthy vocal cords to healthy muscles, and by doing so, you need to keep them exercised, right?
You need to keep them exercised, but you also need desperately, especially if you're a career vocalist, to do another thing, and that is use great technique, especially great balance of breath support and breath control, so that the air that runs through your vocal cords vibrate them instead of blow them. See, the thing about the marathon runner, they're using big muscles, right? And those big muscles, take a little bit longer time to work up. These tiny little half-inch, or 3/4-inch cords in your neck are really, really, really small. And the rest of the musculature in there that lift the soft palate and that work the chest and the head voice and all that, raise and lower or tilt the larynx in right and wrong ways and all that, they're really small. And what I find that, I can get a singer going really fast if I get all that more coordinated. And what I tell people is the way your voice, you gain more vocal ability is 3 ways. First of all, your voice gets stronger. The musculature and the instrument gets stronger. Second of all, it gets more coordinated with itself, right? And thirdly, you use it better with better technique and more communicative. So it gets more flexible, it gets stronger, more flexible, and more coordinated with itself. So the flexibility thing is important as well. So it's like a great guitar player or a drummer or anyone who hits things, and you want to make beautiful sounds out of it. You don't bang it. You don't make it, hit it as hard as you can. You almost ask it to vibrate. Well, that's the trick. That's the ninja trick for great voice. And I'm talking metal screamers even. So that's the thing. That's the reason it doesn't take all that long as they're using good technique to get the voice back.
You brought up metal singers, the screamers. Is there a proper way for them, because of the style of music they do, and correct me if I'm wrong, it almost seems a bit abusive when they sing that way. So is there a certain technique or warm-up exercises or training that they would need to get to in order to do that, to not do any either temporary or permanent damage? I will tell you, if I scream and yell like that, I'm hoarse for a day or two afterwards.
Right.
So what is that?
Right. Well, Bob, it's a magic trick. Jamie Vendera, who is another vocal coach that does work with a lot of metal artists, he calls it the inhalation sensation. I call it pulling for power. But whether you're a metal singer or you're Adele or you're Carrie Underwood, you're singing loud. But just like a great drummer or a great guitar player, what you do is you set up vibration, because the volume should come from resonation, okay? Which comes from vibration that sets up in the resonating surfaces in your head and all. So you need to apply just the right amount of breath pressure to a very open instrument. It requires facial language. It's unbelievable how changing somebody's facial language and posture can make the difference. But I'm going to do something backwards because I don't want to blow your speakers out. I'm going to turn around and do it backwards, okay? Okay. And I'm going to use a mic that's not plugged in, but I'm going to show you what I would do. Yeah. Okay. And I don't know how loud that came out front, but I might have distorted a speaker. But the thing is, I could do that all day long because I pulled that sound. If I pushed that sound, I couldn't do it once without my throat spasming like you're talking about. So that goes with, some of the hardest things a professional vocalist does is teach school. Those are professional vocalists, okay? And I work with a lot of even voice teachers who, and professors and special education teachers and all that, who lose their voices during the day because they're trying to be loud and resonate and connect by pushing instead of pulling. So it is a magic trick. Oh, yeah.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for one of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Judy Rodman, and we're going to find out about not only the difference between pushing and pulling, but how to make that magic happen.
Hey friends, this is Angela McHouston of Music Strong, and I am here with Bob Bender on the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right, everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives, whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhance Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at music's benefits through the lens of science and medicine, entertainment, and business. You can find me and Enhance Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, vocal coach, vocal producer, music producer, songwriter, artist, and public speaker Judy Rodman is with us here in Nashville, Tennessee in the studio. So before the break, we were talking about the difference between pushing and pulling. Now, in my instance, I sit in front of a microphone for a few hours every day talking to people such as yourself. And I don't know the difference between pushing and pulling. Do vocalists who get out there and sing, do they know the difference? Is that something they should know? Well, let me say this. That's something they should know, obviously, but how do they know that they know it?
Well, let's put it this way.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, let's put it this way. If they don't know it, it's job security for me. It really is natural. It's natural. Christina Aguilera, when she does what she does well, Reba, when she does what she does well, that's pulling. They're pulling their voices instead of pushing their voices. It's natural. It's the way the voice really works the best. But you just said the word and I'll show you how you did it. And, okay, but you could have done that and see, I pulled that. It's almost like I'm feeling like a magnet. Instead of blowing my message at you, I'm pulling you into my message. And psychologically, that's a stronger way to go anyway. When we pull up, it's kind of cocky looking, right? Which is why a lot of the iconic country singers, they always had a pretty compelling voice, even if they didn't exactly know what they were doing or didn't have the greatest vocal technique in the world and all that, Johnny Cash or whoever. They sounded big, but that's because they're always standing like this. They're not nose first when they walk, their knees first when they walk. So with all of the strain and all of the competition that has been part of the music business, the first thing an artist is asked to do is give more in the studio.
Right.
First thing they feel like when they're in front of a good crowd is to give them more. What I teach people to do is how to give more.
Got you.
All right.
Yeah.
And then how you sit, even for my voiceover artists that I work with and my reporters and hosts that sit down, you want to power your voice from your butt. You sing your butt off so you don't sing your throat out. So if you move the mic a little bit closer to you, all of a sudden your fatigue factor at the end of the day is way less because it opens your rib cage and makes your diaphragm stretch wider. And that gives your voice breath control because the diaphragm can't come up too much. Okay. But all you know is that I'm sitting in a kind of a cocky mode, the very confident, let me pull you into this mode. Let me be your daddy or your mama. And that actually, that psychological sort of posture works the best for the voice.
So a lot of it, not all of it, obviously, but a lot of it has to do with mindset going into this.
Yes. I've come up with a 3-stranded cord kind of way of putting all this together. And that is what I've discovered. Everything I know that's important for the voice fits one of these 3 areas. One is breath. That's what I'm talking about. Gets people in so much trouble when they blow too much breath or they're breathy. They're too breathy, trying to protect the voice. The second is an open throat, which gives the voice access to resonation, okay? And according to what message you want to deliver, you want to resonate differently, or you want to let a pitch go to a different place because that's where it wants to live. It wants to resonate there. If you don't let it, you'll tighten against it and it will not be happy and it will complain, and so will your throat. The third, so that's breath, throat, and the third area is every bit as important as the rest, and that is performance, meaning communication skills. And I'm not talking about, narcissistically telling you what I've got to say. Real communication skills is a 2-way street. And what I'm really wanting to do is get a certain response to what I'm saying or singing from the one heart I'm talking to. And if I do that, I'm not going to yell at them. I'm not going to be too weak. I'm not going to mumble, because that's not going to get the response I want. So, see, that's the director. That's the overarching director. Who am I talking to? How do I want them to respond to what I'm saying? And then if you have an open throat and you have a good breath technique, you have all these variables. That's why voiceover artists can sound so weirdly different, according to what the chore is. And the background singer can sound so differently according to who the artist is that they're having to be the glove around. If that makes sense.
So are we talking about, in a certain context, are we talking about articulation?
Sure.
Okay.
But articulation not as an English lesson, but as a communication lesson.
Right.
If you articulate too clearly in more of a pop setting or popular music or just a colloquial sort of setting, then you're going to sound like musical theater, and you won't be in the right language, the right articulation language. But that said, there are a lot of slurry languages in music. Some of them pop. Think Billie Eilish. In country would be Sturgill Simpson. They're really muddy with their articulation. I would say they're too muddy because people have to go online to see what their lyrics are. So articulation is an interesting subject because you want to articulate in language of the genre that you're in or the room you're speaking to. So you don't want to sound like musical theater, but neither do you not want people to understand what the heck you're saying or singing.
Yeah, and I get that. In fact, growing up in the generation that I did, thank goodness we have lyric videos now so we can go back and read.
I know. I know.
Some of the songs that we listen to. The articulation value of what you present can help make or break you and the song, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even a radio interview. I mean, how much do you not love interviewing someone whose mouth doesn't move?
Yeah, exactly.
I like to think of it this way, too, and explain this to artists, and then they get it. You can reach an audience. You've got 3 ways to impact an audience: musically, visually, and lyrically. And if they can't understand your lyrics, you've lost fully a third of your impact power. And if your visuals and your music is good enough, then maybe you can get by with it. Maybe people will go online and get those lyrics. But boy, if your lyrics are worth it, And so, you know who makes this mistake the most? Singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
Because they're internally communicating. They're in this movie scene internally, but the voice is not for internal use. It's for external use. And so they're feeling it themselves. I know this because I made this mistake myself. They're feeling it themselves, and that this, the songwriter round night, you'll see them all into it, and they sound like probably a really good song. But man, if they steal the lyric from me, it's one of my pet peeves. And yeah, they better be a little bit more articulate for the demo, or they better get someone who can. Otherwise, it's going to be a poor showing when they present that demo for pitching purposes.
And the other thing, too, is the songwriter or even the performer on stage, they're a storyteller. And I think a lot of them forget that.
Right.
That, okay, you look great and vocally you sound great. But if you're singing a song that lyrically is very impactful, don't make the listener strain to try and figure out what it is that you're trying to communicate.
It's like stealing the goods right before you give it to them.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think that seems to be when we talk about, you said slurring the vocals. When you talk about slurring the vocals, to me, if it fits, great. But if you do it all the time and you're now creating a struggle for the listener, you're not going to keep the listener very long. They're going to go somewhere else where they can get that same energy and emotional feed that they need.
Right. And there's another interesting thing about this. There's a synergy to it. I love that word. If you articulate like a ventriloquist, like with not much facial language and your jaw not moving very much, your throat's not going to be very open, and that's going to limit some of your tonal factors. I've had people come to me that they're like, I want to strengthen my voice. And I'm like, I know exactly how to strengthen your voice. Raise your eyebrows and open your mouth.
Wow. I never would have thought of it that way.
Oh, yeah. That goes for speakers and singers. And also, it's good for vocal health because you're not damming up pressure from all that tension, from all that tightness. So here's a really good way to figure out how much articulation to create. Act like the person, that one heart that you're talking to, is partially or selectively a little deaf, and that they need to see the words in your face. And then your face is going to wake up. And the differences in the tone can be just astronomical. I mean, freaking people out at one lesson. I love it.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for another one of our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Judy Rodman.
Hey, this is April Ryder, and you are listening to The Business Side of Music with the fantastic Bob Bender.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
What does it take to succeed in country music? Hi, this is Candy O'Terry, your host for Country Music Success Stories.
And this is JC Don Valeris, your Music City mentor. Our Nashville-based podcast takes you into the homes and onto the back porches of country music icons.
And the stories they tell us just might inspire you to make your country music success story come true.
Check out Country Music Success Stories on your favorite podcast platform.
And subscribe today.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, vocal coach, vocal producer, music producer, songwriter, artist, and public speaker. You've got credentials that go all day long. Judy Rodman is with us here in the studio in Nashville, Tennessee. And definitely I want people to know how to find you. But before we go down that path, here's a question I have. And I notice this a lot with performers on stage and in the studio too, to a certain extent, although that's more of a controlled environment than live on stage. Mic technique. Now we talk about facial expressions, we talk about pulling instead of pushing, but I watch people, and you know what? We have this problem sometimes in the studio here, getting the guest into the right environment on using the microphone correctly. But it's even more compounded when you have the live vocalist on stage in front of people performing. Mic technique is very important.
Exactly. One thing that you can do, two things I'll say live. One thing is don't hold it like you're drying your fingernail polish. If you want to know why, hold a mic or a weighted object up like that. Like you're drying your fingernails, and loosely gripping and all that. And you'll notice after a while that there's tension that goes all the way up your arm, into your shoulder, into your neck. Okay? And also, if you grab the mic with your whole hand and you sort of squeeze it with a particularly tough lyric, you'll notice it helps you pull open. If your hand is too loose, you can play around with it. If there's the note's not hard and all, you can play around with it. But use your hand and pull your voice like that, and keep the mic, eat the mic live. You got to keep that mic head right close to your mouth. But you can squeeze the mic, and you'll notice I'm pulling myself open just doing that. Okay, the other thing is keep the butt end of the mic down. For the first place, if you've got a cord on it, that's going to cause could cause a short after a while. Butt end of the mic down 45 degrees, it's going to help you pull up and open your throat. And also, the photographers like it a lot better than the mic nose, shots that they get.
Yeah.
But then you can see your audience too. But see, that way you are more prone to pulling up and back from it rather than with the butt end up. And you'll notice your rib cage opens more when the butt end of the mic is down than when it's up. So big time. Now, in the studio, you want to move your feet in closer and use your hands so that when you are at that pop filter, you're able to pull your voice without pulling back too far from the pop filter. You want to stay right near that pop filter where the engineer wants you. But if you move your feet in, two things are going to happen. One, your rib cage is going to open more, and two, your throat's going to open more.
So not only posture, which is important, and mic technique and breath control, what else is there that vocalist needs to do to protect the voice when they're not singing?
Well, anything that is good for your body is good for your voice for the first place. It's kind of connected. Mm-hmm. So all those things, sleep and eating well and eating things that you're not allergic to and that don't give you too much phlegm and all that. A lot of water big time. Another thing is pineapple juice and water is my go-to for lubricating a voice that's irritated, like throat that's a little irritated or a little dry. The bromelain enzyme in the pineapple juice is what does it. So you want to dilute it so it doesn't add to any acid reflux thing that you might have. So just like a fourth or fifth pineapple juice and the rest water. And you won't believe, my students won't hardly go on stage or in the studio without a little pineapple juice in a little can, just in case they need it.
Right.
Or in their water bottle. Yeah.
Yeah, almost so like a 1-to-5 ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that because I've toured with vocalists who would do throat coat, which is out there,
I've
or
tried all of that.
the throat spray or the honey before the show. But the pineapple juice diluted with water seems to work the best.
The only people that don't want to do that are people, of course, that are allergic to pineapple. And I've had a couple of students that were. So what they do instead, my alternate to pineapple juice, if you can't get it or you're allergic to it, is water, cayenne pepper, and lemon juice.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you want, you can put a little honey in it, but it doesn't really matter all that much. Just cayenne pepper, water, and honey. My sister used to call it fire water when she would do a little acting, and she would take it on stage with her. Yeah.
And I'm assuming not a lot of cayenne pepper.
You know what? You could have a lot of cayenne pepper. You'd be amazed how, little it burns, really, unless you've got a sore throat.
Yeah.
But you do want to try whatever it is that you do on a day you're not actively performing, just to check it out beforehand. Everybody reacts differently to things.
You brought up something very important, and that is don't try things out just before you get on stage.
Right,
You need to really research this and spend some time and experiment and see what works.
Yes, and one other thing is don't be doing vocal technique exercises when you're on stage. You got to, as Mr. Miyagi and the Karate Kid would say, you got to trust your training. The Italians say they go on stage with their technique in their little finger, meaning that's about how much they think about technique. They do have a couple of things that they really try to keep in mind technically, but the rest of them is totally into the story and into the delivery and all that. So that's what vocal exercises, vocal training is for, is doing that and getting you ready It's like wax on, wax off, to go back to the Karate Kid. Getting ready to be pulling your voice in performance as your modus operandi.
And that's the other thing, too, is the training that you do is exactly that. It's training, but it should not be the performance. The training leads you to the performance.
Now, right, trust your training, and just like a street fight, that's not the time to figure out how to do that move you just learned in karate class. In karate class.
Well, sometimes karaoke class, too.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too, is you should, and I tell this to artists before they go on stage, you know your set list, you know which songs you're going to do, you know what order they're in. You should also know your choreography, and choreography is also the vocal aspect of things, knowing when to really expend a lot of energy and when to pull back too.
Right. I call it the dance of the melody. You develop the dance of the melody as you practice, and then you just put that into memory. That the way to make that E more vertical so it doesn't get tight on you on that high note. The way to take a breath in those phrases, because otherwise you're going to push that last thing out instead of pull it. All these things you need to create and then practice into muscle memory, the dance of the melody.
And then one more question I have, and that is the artist. My wife will watch The Voice or one of these talent shows, and I'll listen to someone, and it's so easy these days to vocal correct, to auto-tune.
Mm-hmm.
If a vocalist is just off a smidge, pitch-wise, obviously if they're off by several notes, we have bigger issues. But if they're just a little sharp or a little flat, and maybe it goes both directions or maybe just one way or another, is there a way to help them correct that? Maybe I should ask this. Is it because they're not really listening to themselves, or they can't hear themselves well enough? Or is it just something that they've learned as they've gone along and they've never corrected it?
It's because they're human. And here's the thing. There are people who are not as pitch fixed as other people. I'm not going to name names with the artist, but when you over pitch fix, you sound like an EDM act, and you lose feeling and you lose spirit. So if you don't auto-tune something that is too far off, though, that you're going to throw people, because people in radio now that listen to radio or listen to music, wherever it is, they're used to things being auto-tuned, so they're kind of used to pitch perfection.
Yeah.
So here's what I say to both artists and engineers and tuners. Tune what distracts and leave the rest alone.
I like that. Do you think we've gotten to the point where we've just auto-tuned to pitch correct so much that we're losing the authenticity of the singer?
Not only auto-tuned, but also, put it in the groove, like quantized it and all that, too much with country for sure. With hip hop and all that, it's laid back. With R&B, it tends to be kind of in between the beats and stuff. And, bluegrass is a little more like on top of it. Jazz is a little more on top of it. So the nuances of rhythm are important. If your audience wants to hear a human being and not a machine, and that's not with all music. Sometimes they want a machine, right? But not with the genres like I'm talking about. You want some play. I'd say the same thing is true with players, with musicians, drummers. There's a difference between a live drummer and a drum machine. And there's a difference between a steel player, for sure, or a string player. We do things because we can, or because it's cheaper, or because it's less time consuming and all that. But when you get to the master level of, I'm going to do a master vocal on this, and this is going to be the music I'm going to be releasing, not just doing a demo on. You want some play in there. You want magic, not perfection. You want magic.
I love that. How can people find you?
JudyRodman.com. And also, I want to tell people about this too, because I'm really excited about it. I have a blog. I have a podcast also by the same name, but my blog is a lot older. I've had it up for a long time, but it's called All Things Vocal. You can find it at allthingsvocal.com, and it's coming up on 2 million views.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. And my current blog also always has like the podcast audio links in it if you'd rather listen. So yeah, check out allthingsvocal.com because it's a lot of free vocal information too.
The pandemic hasn't slowed you down. You're still keeping busy.
Yeah, it just made me more creative, Yeah. And also I can reach globally. I mean, I teach people as far away as Australia and the UK and all that. So yeah, I think a lot of us have figured out some more creative ways to do our business so that now, and also we've dug in and discovered more things and learned more things. Now that the pandemic is becoming controllable, I think we're going to not use the stuff we just learned. I think we're going to add it to our arsenal here and to do what we do. So I'm really excited about this year.
I am too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.
Sell you on nothing. I'm gonna give you a reason to buy. Ain't got no money, but I got a lot of loving. Come on, baby, won't you give me a try? Slip away with me, baby. Slip away with me now. Today's a day, baby, we can slip away. I know my history, I've seen a lot, and now I've gotta say what's true. This town will break your heart, it isn't a mystery. Stick around here, that's what people will do. Slip away with me, baby. Slip away with me now. Today's a day, baby, we can slip away. Slip away. When I see that clock up on the wall, something deep inside me hears the call. When I see that clock up on the wall, something deep inside me hears the call. Slip away with me, baby. Slip away with me now. Today's a day, baby, we can slip away. Loving you makes my life worth living. Every moment becomes a special time. Let's not waste the chance we've been given. Slip away with me, it's time you made up your mind. Slip away with me, baby. Slip away with me now. Slip away with me, baby. Come on, baby, I can show you how. Today's a day, baby, we can slip away. Slip away. Slip away. Slip away. When I see that clock up on the wall, something deep inside me hears the call.
You're out. Finished. Expelled. I want you off this campus at 9 o'clock Monday morning.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.